Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates, with your host, Cindy Gellermini.
So anyway, long story short, I put him in the group home and they had no idea what they were doing. They were completely unprepared for him. They had no training. They had never dealt with somebody with autism before. Everybody in the group homes were old. They were, in their 50s in wheelchairs and moving in slow motion. And then you bring this 20-year-old running back and forth who's upset because they don't understand him because he can't talk. So he'll pick up a chair, throw it across the room. So then they call the police. It was just, they took him out in handcuffs. It was a disaster. And so I didn't want to keep repeating myself to everyone, telling them what happened, right? So I did the same thing. I just kind of turned my phone on the camera and I would just talk into it. And I'm like, I'll just throw it up on YouTube. And if my friends and family want to watch it, let them watch it. Mm-hmm. And then you start getting all these followers. I'm like, I have no idea how I'm getting all these followers. Who are these people?
They're me and you. They're the moms that are hidden in their homes trying to figure out this super confusing thing.
Yeah. And then I would hear from people like in Wisconsin that are like, your son is just like my son. I thought we were the only ones, I didn't know. Right. You start hearing.
That's why I started.
Yeah. And I can only imagine the stories that you probably hear, good things and heartbreaking things, like from people with special needs that would say to me, I wish my mother loved me the way you loved your son. And to hear that they feel rejected by their own parents, that's heartbreaking. Right. Yeah. But also to hear the good stuff, though, from other parents or people that got a job where they're going to work as an aide and they've never worked with anybody autistic. So they Google it. Right. And then they found me and they're like, oh, and then they fall in love with Robbie and they're like, now I can't wait to start my job. And then they would learn just by watching me with him, like I would figure things out even on my own. Like when I took him shopping, I realized like he would plop on the floor and stuff, but if I put his hands on the cart, it sort of grounded him and he liked to hold the cart and kind of push it, and I kind of learned, I didn't realize it until I actually watched myself on my videos. I'm like, wait a minute, I think that really helps. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. So but I started, Robbie's a lot older. I'm 20 years ahead of you with all this, with the autism. So it's interesting for me to listen to. Yeah. So anyway, so when I watch you and I see what you're doing, I'm like, yes, I totally get her because I have 4 kids too. And I understand kind of how you start. And it's like, you just want to put your feelings out there and just kind of talk about what's going on, not intending for anybody to follow. And before you know it, you've got all these people following you. But I didn't know that mine was going to end with my son's memorial service. I had no idea that it would ever end. So then I kind of took a break for a while. And then I wrote my children's books. And before they came out last year, I said, I need to get back in the loop because I've been out of the autism land for a while. Right. Because not only
how long has it been?
My son wasn't in the, he wasn't in school for autistic kids anymore. You know what I mean? He was living in a group home and going to a day program and stuff. So I didn't need to learn about autism. I didn't need to be in support groups. I didn't need any, like, I don't need to learn about autism. I live it. Yeah. Like when April comes around, Autism Awareness Month, I'm like, oh, trust me, we're aware. We live it.
Yeah.
We live it
every day of the year. Yeah.
So anyway, I said, I need to get back in the loop. And my daughter's friend who does my hair, her son is autistic. And she told me, she says, you have to follow Finding Cooper's Voice. So that's how I found you, through my hairdresser, because her son is autistic too. Yeah. And then I started following a couple of people and I joined, got on Facebook on some of these autism groups. And I was stunned to see the fighting and the bickering that goes on these groups and what you're not allowed to say, certain subjects you can't bring up because it starts a war on there. You can't bring up ABA therapy, you can't bring up vaccines, you can't talk about Autism Speaks or the puzzle piece and all this crazy stuff. So I wanted to ask you about that because to me, it's very scary putting yourself out there. Like when I first got out there on YouTube, I didn't even want to say what my last name was. I never said where I lived because I was trying to protect my family, And then Robbie didn't live with us anymore, so I wasn't that worried, but I was careful though, never to say what town he lived in or anything like that. Right. So do you ever worry about that stuff with your kids? You ever worry about like stalkers or any kind of craziness being out in the public eye like that?
Yeah, I do. I've had different periods where I've had some viral videos in my past that have that's how I've grown to the size that I am. And with that comes the double-edged sword, comes this like amazing community that grows and thrives and supports each other. And then there's like kind of the underbelly of the internet that surfaces up that's just really icky and scary that most people have no idea exists. Like they have no idea. And after those kind of virally things, I've taken some time off and stepped back and remembered that my life is in real life here. This is my real life. It's not online.
Right.
I would have done some things differently if I would have known that I was going to be the size that I would have. Like I went to put Cooper's name in my blog. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have shared some of the things I did in the beginning. I have never shared a meltdown. I have never shared potty training. I've never done that, but just other things like, back when I had 7 followers, I didn't think it was weird to share a picture of my kid in a diaper. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. But I didn't know.
Right.
So now I try to be, I give myself grace and I try to be as respectful as I can to Cooper and my other kids and share my story is what I try to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's how I kind of feel about it too. It's like, well, this is my story. You have a different journey and, this is mine. So have you had to deal with any people that are like bullies online that like give you a hard time about, oh, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that?
Oh, all the time. And the funny part is that can range from anything. I always say sharing your life online is like being scolded 100 times a day. And it can be from anything from my kids' car seats to the Lucky Charms on the counter because they're sugary. I got scolded for a page that I follow that I love was she did a video of going through the drive-through for something and getting a Diet Coke, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love McDonald's Diet Coke. It's like my favorite splurge. There were like 6 people that were like, that's a carcinogen, you're going to die. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So, but there are bigger things too. Like I try to be so respectful about has autism, is autistic, special needs versus disability. I try to research but I've kind of learned that no matter what I say, it's going to bother somebody. And it's just, you just have to pick. I actually had a whole year with my writing where I didn't use the word autism. I was like, I'm done. I can't fight about it anymore. You're missing my message of this beautiful boy who's misunderstood and our family who's trying because I said is autistic. And so for a long time, I really, wordsmith myself and kind of quieted it. And I'm over it now. I don't know. I'm doing my best.
Yeah. I know. I got the same stuff. It's like, because I gave him ice cream. Oh, you're giving me sugar. You're giving me dairy. I'm like, you should be. And then they'll send me like a whole long thing, article about, whatever. I'm like, okay.
The amount of text that someone who hates you will write is unbelievable. It's like, whoa. Yeah. That's a lot of information on Diet Coke.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So as the years have gone on now and you're kind of fine tuning your message and all that kind of stuff, like, so you just sort of mentioned it. It's like you're missing the message of, this beautiful boy that, so what would you say is Cooper's message?
That he wants to be here and he wants to be in this world, but it's really confusing. One of the elements I work into almost every piece is I really believe that he was born into a world that didn't make sense to him and wasn't ready for him yet. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're ready for him quite yet. I think people still value this certain success and this certain path to achievement and the things that we're supposed to do. And Cooper's going to have a really full life. He's going to live with us until he doesn't want to or can't. And we're going to get him volunteering in day programs, and we're going to do our best to give him his full life. And he's so happy and he's so loved. And that's enough. Mm-hmm. Like that's enough. And I want, when the world, when someone's at the grocery store that doesn't know autism and they see someone covering their ears and stomping their feet who appears to be in their 30s, I want them to think of Cooper and be like, well, that kid's awesome. Like, obviously it's the same thing, and I've gotten so many messages like that of people that have had their eyes opened in a good way. So that's why we share.
Yes. Yeah. I got a great message like that too from somebody that followed my videos. And he said he was at the doctor's office and he noticed in the waiting room that there was a kid that was just like Robbie. And he said before he watched his videos, he probably would have just kind of stayed on the other side of the room and not known what to do. But now he felt he knew how to interact with him, and he went over to him and he said hi to him, give me a high five, and he was so happy that he could interact with this child, that now he recognized what autism is. He recognized that's what was going on, so it's moments like that that make it worth it, I think.
Well, and I believe most of the world is kind. Like, I truly believe that. I'm an optimist. I think that 98% of the world is really kind and really curious. And staring isn't necessarily a bad thing. Not knowing what to do isn't a bad thing. Like, just I look at my little Sawyer when he was younger. We were always putting him in situations like Miracle League, or situations with other people with disabilities, physical, neurological, whatever it may be. And he had questions and he was curious, and that's not a bad thing.
No.
So I like to believe that the world is kind, and I'm always like, hi. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the difference? I remember there was a period of time when I was not in the best place about my son's diagnosis, where I would walk around Target and I would just be like, say something, challenge me, and it's like, now I'm like, hello, we're here.
Yeah.
You gotta grow.
Right. And that's a change in you over time too. Yeah. And I think, I'm wondering, if you didn't put yourself out there so publicly, would those changes have still come, or does it make you examine yourself more because you're more in the public eye, and people are watching every move and listening to every word you say?
Well, I think if I would have never had a community like I have now, I wouldn't have grown as much.
Right.
I needed to find, I don't think the autism diagnosis would have been nearly as confusing or scary or worrisome if I would have had a community of people like you. But again, it was a different time. There was no social media. There wasn't people sharing their feelings on the internet. So, and even 11 years ago, it was different. And I was so alone. We thought we had the only kid with severe nonverbal autism. And then once I found people and other mamas and families and siblings and husbands, our whole world changed. It was like we just let out a breath, and we were like, we're not alone. Okay.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of us out there. But yeah.
Well, even today, one of my jokes is like, it's like 1 in 44, and it's like, where are they? Like, I know they're online, I know they're in their computers, but like, where are they?
Yeah. Well, because we know there's many different levels, and
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like some of the adult women that I've interviewed, I wouldn't, if I met them out somewhere, I would never know they were autistic, until you have a conversation with them. So it looks right. What do they say? You've met one person with autism. You've met one person with autism, because everybody's very different. Like I see some of your videos of Coop, and he's not like my son, because I can hear him. I see him trying to communicate, and I see him using his talker, and you understand the words that he's trying to say. My son didn't even do that. So I just had to read his mood or
Your son
understand his grunt.
Yeah. Have you met Lori Hellman virtually? I'll share her with you after. Her son Skylar, he's going to be 19, and he sounds a lot like your son.
Yeah.
She's an amazing mama. She has a podcast, but we did talk the other day, and her son at 19 is in a very different spot than Cooper is at 11. And,
right.
And she's like, it gets harder to find the people like Skylar as he's gotten older. And I'm like, I understand. Yeah.
Oh, I always just tell people, just watch my videos. It's just so much easier. It's like, oh, watch the video, you'll see Robbie. So yeah, I think we do need to, there's so many kids that are being diagnosed now that I think it's important for us to kind of pave the road for everybody coming behind us. So for me, you're coming up behind me, but now Coop's 11. So, you've got people with the 2-year-olds coming up behind you, and I'm hoping to keep seeing progress. And I think it's important to educate the world, everybody else, about autism, so that when they run into our kids, they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. He's like Robbie. Oh, he's like Cooper. Okay. I get it. Yeah. And that's why I wrote the book. Actually, it's not why I wrote the books. The reason I wrote it was just to tell Robbie's story because it was just part of my healing process. It was as I was writing it. And again, it was just putting the emotions, right? I wasn't even putting my emotions in. I was just telling stories about when he was a little boy and just remembering his life. And as I was writing them, my friend who's a teacher, she has an autistic son, but she teaches public school. And she says, oh, I can't wait to read that to my classroom. And I said, oh, actually, that's a great idea because all these kids that are in public school, like Coop, right? Like if the other kids had read the stories, then they would know. And I've told the story a couple of times. There's a friend of mine. She moved to New Jersey from the Midwest. Her son had cerebral palsy. And before they got here, she did a video of him and they had showed it to the whole school. And the kids learned what cerebral palsy was. They learned who he was, what his likes and dislikes were, and whatever. So by the time he arrived to school, they all had seen the movie already, and he was like a rock star. And right, because they saw him on the big screen, you know, and it was so cool. And I thought that's so brilliant. And this is just me personally. I don't understand why parents won't tell people that their kid is autistic, like they're trying to hide it. I'm just the opposite. I feel like if I want you to know he's autistic and I want you to know what autism is and understand it. And now you won't be afraid of my son. You're not going to think, oh, he's so weird. You know, you'll just understand. Oh, okay, I get it. It's autism. On my way.
I just read this article about this new thing where parents are pulling their autistic children out of school to avoid getting an IEP and having an IEP and then sending them to online school. And it's not going well, obviously, because their children need supports and services and different accommodations. And the teachers are like, this isn't going well. And I'm like, why would you ever not want an IEP? It's like the best thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
Helps their kids. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that I
Well,
understand.
I remember when they first diagnosed Robbie, they were so afraid to tell me, you know, it was like all the therapists and stuff. And they're like, well, now, you know, we understand you might not want to hear this diagnosis, but we just want to let you know that it's better for him to have this because then he'll be able to get the supports that he needs.
We heard the same thing. Yeah.
And I could tell by the way they were telling me that they were waiting for me to freak out and be like, what do you mean? There's nothing wrong with my child, you know? And I was like, okay. And I was just relieved to get an answer. You know, I was like, oh, okay, so that's what this is. That's what's been going on, you know, but I could tell by that there must be parents out there that don't want to hear that their kid has any label on them. Nope, my child is just like everyone else. They don't want them to have, I'm assuming that's why they don't want them to have an IEP, right? Because that means they're labeled and they want them to be like everybody else. But at this point, I feel like so many kids out there have ADD, ADHD, you know, autism, you know, diabetes, like whatever. There's so many things out there, you know, different learning challenges or physical challenges or whatever. At this point, everybody's got something. Everybody's got something, you know, it's like, you know, I learned that just in general in life. Everybody's got something. Everybody's going through something, you know, it doesn't make you any different than anybody. You know, we all have our thing, whatever it is. You know, nobody's living a perfect life. It might look that way on Instagram, but it's not.
No, it's not.
They're really not. So tell me about your book.
Yeah. Okay. So it is called Forever Boy. This is Cooper. He is 18 months old and little heart or Sawyer's in my belly, which we didn't tell anyone at the time. Yeah, I know. It's so fun. It was the most perfect photo with the sun.
Yeah, the sunlight in the hair.
Oh, it's just perfect.
Yeah.
So it's really about, I like to say, because I've had someone, I put this in here, they're like, you know, why are you telling your son's story? It's not yours to tell. It's really my story. And it's about how my husband and I met. We had our miscarriage. We had Cooper. We wanted to have more kids. We actually separated, went through a divorce, and got remarried to each other, which is a really interesting topic that people love to learn about. And
at what point was that? How old was Coop when that happened?
The kids were like 5 and 3.
Okay, that's just very interesting because there's such a high divorce rate with kids with autism, and the fact that I didn't know that. So you divorced
and then we got remarried and had 2 more babies. And it's, you know, about our challenges with the school district and where we're gonna live and all those different parts and how autism can impact relationships and friendships and family dynamics. And I just tell it. I have a storyteller, so it's just all different stories about the last, 10 years. And it's really a story of hope, and it's a story of my transformation. So, midway through the book, at the climax, when I kind of get into some of the aggression parts and the harder parts that I don't share a lot publicly, I realized that I needed to do a lot of changing. Like I needed to make myself different. I was stuck in this sad dark place. I was looking at this as a negative thing, and that wasn't fair, and I was missing Cooper's life. And I did a big transformation in how I did that, and our life is completely different now because I look at it differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely have a great attitude. I mean, I can see it in all your posts, and it does almost make it seem like it's, oh, life is always so wonderful. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not. It's very difficult when you have an autistic kid. It's not, but my message is, like in the books, I say it over and over again at the end of every chapter. I love you just the way you are. I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to change who you are. I have to change me. I have to change me, and I have to change my reactions and how I am toward you. And I need to help you through, whatever. And I knew that parents would read it to their kids, and I wanted parents to read those words over and over and over again. So it gets in here,
Yep.
so that it kind of changes their attitude, instead of feeling like, oh, I'm having such a, oh, my life sucks, whatever, because I see a lot of those posts, and I'm like, girl, you got to change your attitude. Like, I'm not going to say that to somebody, but when you see these posts on Facebook, it's like, look, yes, it is hard. I know it's hard. It is, but you got to pull yourself out of that dark place, and, and you got to change what's going on in here and here. Or you're not going to make it. You're not going to get through.
Well, and you're the only person that's going to fight for your child until the death. And you can't do that when you're in that dark, angry place. You can't.
Right.
You don't see things right.
Right.
And so yeah, when I made that change, I became a much happier person, a better mother, better. It
Yeah.
like, it was like a weight was lifted. And did Cooper's autism get any easier? No,
No.
no, he was exactly who he was. But I have so many different examples. It's like, I stopped trying to go places and pretend that we were something that we weren't. We couldn't go to Aunt so-and-so's for Christmas. We can't go to the camping trip that everyone goes to, but
Right.
we can do these things.
Right.
Even today, we still can't fly in an airplane. We can't go to a restaurant, but we just had our first ever 3-day trip to a water park. And we made it work because we got a cabin and a cabana, and we brought our own food. So, my message is like, you're going to make it through this. You just have to adjust the picture of what the end looks like.
Yeah.
It looks so different, but it's still good.
Yeah. 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 And it, you haven't hit puberty yet. You're going to hit that worst period still, but it does get better, and I try to let people know that once they get like into their 20s and they get past that whole puberty and teenage stage and everything, they do slow down and calm down, and it does get better. But, what can I say? It's good. It makes you a stronger person, makes you a better person,
Yeah.
I think. So, all right. So can you, for people that don't know, give them your contact info, where they can find you, Facebook, Instagram, and your website and all that.
Yeah, so I am on Facebook at Finding Cooper's Voice, and I do a lot of videos over there and writing about autism, and I share our family. Instagram is kind of like a lot of behind the scenes, so that's Finding Cooper's Voice, a lot of fun photos and cute things of our baby is really kind of the center over there. She's the cutest little thing. My website is findingcoopersvoice.com, and that has a lot about my nonprofit, the More Than Project, how to have me as a speaker, all that sort of thing, blog posts written by me and other people. And then my book, which is out April 5th, is doing super well so far. I'm in pre-sale world. Oh my gosh, that is a whole thing. It's doing really well, and you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and indie bookstores.
Oh, awesome. Wonderful. All right. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. You've taken an hour away from all the kiddies.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's like, yay, nobody came in the room and interrupted or anything. It's awesome. All right. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description, as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.